Hello and warm welcome to 250 episode of SAP on Azure YouTube podcast. Today is October 13, and today with Holger and Robert, we're here to talk everything related to SAP and Microsoft. Hi, everybody. So today we have some new kids on the block and old kids on the block. We talk about the Azure NetApp. A lot of topic. I'm really pretty excited. I'm really looking about to hear more. We'll hear more about many updates since the last time Geert was sharing the last time, some 3 months ago. Many things happens. One of the very interesting stuff is a new feature called Extension 1 for the Azure NetApp, both for HANA and the Oracle. I'm personally very looking for it. This is the feature which I internally label as no pinning anymore approach. We'll hear also some updates on the customer side. So many interesting stuff. So let's first start maybe with a guest, and that's Bernd from the NetApp. We have here you, Bernd, for the first time. So maybe just for the folks who do not know about you, maybe please can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you for having me here. So my name is Bernd Herth from Germany, so close to SAP's headquarters where I'm positioned. And I'm a member of the product management team from Azure for Azure NetApp Files with a strong focus on SAP and business applications. So that is where I started in the PM role after nowadays almost 11 years at NetApp, and I'm trying to focus on pushing the development and features in that direction, that it's a perfect fit for the SAP running SAP applications on Azure NetApp Files and benefit from all the features we built in. So that is my short story here. And
so one of the old kids on the block, Ralf, he's almost part of the furniture, here built in the podcast. But still, for the guys who maybe see you for the first time, maybe just some update. Who are you? What are you doing?
Of course, yeah. My name is Ralf Klahr, working within Microsoft in the engineering part. Have a very strong focus on our largest customers, so to say, running SAP. And mainly on Azure NetApp Files. So this is I figured out that I like this, and this is some area of focus I'm in. So and they pulled me in many huge XXL, very large projects where we really need to focus on database performance, latency, and so on. Our design of those XXL landscapes in the SAP term, and here not only SAP HANA but also in, let's say, the ECC world, in Oracle, DB2, name it. So all this is my playground where I try to help the customers.
Super, yeah. Herth is another old kid on the block. He also it's another part of the furniture here, but still. Give us some update, maybe for the guys who are just seeing you for the first time.
Thanks. Thanks, Goran. I was already surprised when you called us the new kids on the block, or as somebody new kid on the block, because I think from an age perspective, we're probably all we all wish we would still be kids still. I'm one of the directors for product management for Azure NetApp Files. My focus is on what we call the outbound or solutioning side of the development, right? So we have a large group of inbound product managers that create the capabilities that customers want, not only in the SAP space but in other workload areas as well. And me and my team take those solutions and features forward and, let's say, build them into solutions and bring them to market in a I would say customer meaningful way. So that's kind of the way you can look at my role, my team's role. Let's say from a history perspective, I think Ralf, Bernd, and myself go back a long way, even from the times when the cloud didn't even exist or wasn't even a thing. So we know each other for a long time, and it's always been around something to do with SAP one way or another. So I'm looking forward to this podcast, and it's great to be in this group together.
Super. And I mean, Gert, you actually guessed, the last one from the NetApp on the NetApp topics on 3-4 months ago, and many things happen in between. So can you give us a bit update,
Yeah,
just
sure.
for the folks?
More than happy. And I think the easiest way to kind of go through that is by popping up what's called the Azure NetApp Files What's New landing page. So I'm just sharing my screen right now, and that's where you should see, let's say, everything all the way back from starting in June. So what I'll do is I'll not go further back than that, but I wanted to pick up a few of the highlights, of course, as what we've announced over the last couple of months. And in particular, of course, I start in June 2024 when the application volume group for SAP HANA Extension 1 was launched, which is the biggest part of this conversation in this podcast today. So obviously that's going to be the larger part of the conversation, but I did want to use the time a little bit to scroll through a couple of the other new elements that we've announced as well. For instance, not important directly, but indirectly, a lot of customers have been asking for better metrics. Especially around performance, right? So customers want to know more about what kind of IOPS are working on an Azure NetApp Files volume, and more than what we were able to provide prior. So now we have more distribution on type of IOPS, total IOPS, other throughput types, as well as total throughput are reporting a lot better, which obviously means that from an operational standpoint, you can monitor the usage of your Azure NetApp Files volumes better, and you can act upon them better if in case of some need, right? So I think it's a minor change with major effect for customers, a major benefit. So I wanted to pick that up. I think from a customer managed key standpoint, I think it's important that we now have full regional coverage. So any customer that wants to use customer managed keys on their volumes can start using those across all regions, including US Gulf regions as well. We also have the opportunity now to transition a volume from platform managed keys as they were deployed prior to customer managed keys. So if a customer wants to do that without any data migration, that is also now possible. Basically switch the encryption key type from platform to customer managed keys. Another thing that I want to note is two things that are generally available. Cross-zone replication is now generally available, right? So in case you're building let's say an in-region type DR between zones where you want to use storage-based replication, cross-zone replication, of course, is a major benefit, major cost savings as well, and that's now also generally available. So that's great. There is some more interesting news coming down the pipe as well. I can't really talk about it yet, but stay tuned for updates on, let's say, cross-zone and cross-region replication soon. So there's more to it coming.
And there was a quite requested cross-zone replication as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. And also we have now moved the what's called the populate existing volume for availability zone placement to GA, right? So customers that have a prior deployment in a regional fashion without any zonal knowledge, they can just change those to zonal deployments by populating those that volume information, and then start using things like another zone deployment or for HA or for DR with cross-region replication, right? So it's a great addition to customers that have prior deployments. Nice. Another one that's kind of got launched in August is also minor in the sense that we now support smaller volumes than the 100 gigabyte starting size of volumes, and in particular for shared files where the volume sizes aren't that big and you have a lot of over provisioning happening. That could be a major advantage as well to basically lower your storage footprint and save on cost, right? So it's a minor one if you think about it, but also with major effect for customers. Another one I wanted to call out is that we have now general availability of Azure NetApp File storage with cool access. Right, so not only on standard service level, but on all service levels. And that means that for a certain type of scenarios, for instance, for if you want to do file or stream-based backups, you can actually do that to a cool access enabled volumes and save on cost. So you get the performance benefit, but obviously you can save dramatically on cost given the cool access nature of those volumes and the data type with backups, right? So that'd be a one to call out as well. And then I think last but not least, there's 2 improvements on, let's say, cost savings or cost optimization. One is reserve capacity. So Azure NetApp Files now offers reserve capacity or Azure reservations as part of the offerings, which gives you, based on a capacity allocation and a duration or term, massive discount benefits, right? So if you look at 100 terabyte SKU or 1 petabyte SKU across either standard, premium, or ultra, and a reservation between 1 or 3 years, then obviously you can get up to a 2 double-digit discount for that reservation.
So that's something similar what we already have on a compute, so to say.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, as well as other Azure Storage offerings have that. So Azure NetApp Files is now on par with it as well. It's generally available. You can go to the portal and basically go ahead and purchase a reservation. We do support single subscription scope, multiple subscription scope as well. So there's a lot of flexibility and benefit to that. So I wanted to call that out. And also the dynamic service level change we have enhanced. So as you know, you can change a volume between service levels upward at any point in time. But there was a cooldown period of 7 days before you could move back to a lower tier. We can actually now do that within the after a day. So 24 hours is now the cooldown period, which obviously massively benefits customers that have, let's say, bursty workloads for a short period of time, but don't have to wait for another week to move the data back to the original tier, for instance.
So basically, if they need to burst, they switch, they pay more. When the burst is gone, okay, they can switch back and pay less after 24 hours. Okay, and save them on. Nice.
Exactly. Instead of the full week, which basically would let you pay for a full week without using that performance, right? And then another one that's recently announced, actually a couple of days ago, is the feature to enable the change of network volumes from basic to standard. We could already do that, of course, today, but until today, it would require a certain downtime for the applications. We now have the preview of changing from basic to standard network features without downtime, basically online conversion, if you will, of those volumes without any particular downtime. We have a preview in a few regions. We plan to roll that out across multiple regions, of course, as we progress through the preview. And that will let customers basically enable them to more non-disruptively change from let's say the old-fashioned basic networking to the more modern current networking. So I mean, that's the highlights for now. I think I wanted to cover that real quick to make sure that everybody's on par. And with that, I'll stop sharing and hand it back to you, Goran.
Yeah, and I mean, actually, what we can put the main topic is that new extension 1 feature. Currently in the public preview. Basically, Bernd, you are working on a NetApp side. You are covering this. Ralf, I know you were involved from a Microsoft side on a backend. So what does it mean? You know, what brings us? What is the benefit? I know it, but I love it, you know, but
yeah, it is some very important updates on the application volume group feature. If you want, I can share a few slides to guide us through that. And let me share my screen and go to the presentation mode. So you should see the slides, right? So I'm focusing on extension 1, and I'm including AVG Oracle because it's driven by the same engine, and it's just a new rule set that supports a different application. So as Geert mentioned, it's in preview, so that's a short disclaimer as usually in preview, so when dealing with slide. But what I want to share here is a look at the history and the new features of the application volume group with the HANA extension 1 and AVG Oracle. A single slide to what's different between HANA and Oracle, so for those guys who want to look, and a few remarks when we think about how to change from an old to a new, what needs to be obeyed, what are the guidelines, restrictions, constraints, etc. So AVG history news, as Geert mentioned, a long time ago, we have introduced the application volume group as the single engine, workflow engine for the initial deployment. That was back in 2021. So it was really a demanding way of improving the performance, improving the volume placement, guide the customers by choosing or proposing volume names, proposing throughput based on size, in implementing manual QS for that. And when we started the development, we developed the application volume group as a generic engine. So a single API, and by selecting an application, we have built-in rules. Of course, those built-in rules need some tests, adaptation. So we started with SAP HANA, and we had the main optimizations are at the back end, where we now provide for performance-critical volumes, unique storage endpoints, technically expressed as IPs, which will help us in the back end, but as well as improve the performance at the front end from an NFS stack point of view. So that was really important. And in addition, we have, of course, a placement that should be close to the VM. So that was, by the way, then one of the restrictions that came back into the year 2021, which means we want to improve for lowest latency. So we need to put the VMs, the database VMs, and ANF in close proximity, meaning in the same even in the same data center. And zones could be huge, as we all know. So the technical means for that at that time was using a proximity placement group. Proximity placement group is originally a construct when you put VMs in. It takes care that the VMs are all close together, meaning in the same data center. And we use that information stored in the PPG to figure out at time of deployment, where should we deploy the ANF volumes? Meaning we deployed it always in the same data center as the database VMs. That, of course, has a few restrictions, which comes in the pinning request form, and I cover that in a minute. Another restriction at that time, of course, only basic network was available, and also platform managed keys was the standard. There was no extra network feature like standard as we have it today, as Geert mentioned, nor CMK as a customer managed key. So,
yeah, but here I would say just one, I mean, prior to proximity, prior to application volume groups, we had to do pinning not just on a compute, but also on the ANF.
Right.
So here with the application volume groups, we don't have to do any more pinning of the NetApp. We still do have to pinning on the compute, which we have it, but it's definitely improvement. So meaning customers are much more free, not dependent on us.
Yeah.
Meaning also me who was doing this pinning.
Absolutely, it was a nightmare. It was basically a pinning on both sides. Yeah, you need to be sure where the VMs are, and then you have to tell the ANF backend team, please figure out the data center and pin to that data center. That was a huge improvement, but nevertheless, it is a sort of restriction, because what you need to ensure that the next time you start your VMs, they are still in the same data center. And PPG, so proximity placement group as a construct, isn't sufficient for that. What we need then at the VM side is to place them in an AVset and then technically pin that AVset to a compute cluster, which is fine, but a restriction at the VM side was then a single compute cluster and not even a single data center. Right? So that was a bit of a planning, of a load, of a balancing issue. And now, and that was basically, here's an example of an HA setup. So we needed 2 PPGs, we needed 2 AV sets. Both AV sets need to be pinned in data centers in 2 different zones. And then that was done by requesting a pinning form, and then you use the PPG and just deploy the volumes, and all was fine. So it was a huge improvement beside all the performance improvements at backend and front end, which came with AVG. but it's still a hassle for customers, specifically for high load customers. It is safe, but more work than we all wish for. So what changed is basically with extension 1, we improved the backend engine. So we now have availability zone volume placement. In other words, we allow ANF, the AVG, to select the zone. That was first implemented at the volumes a while ago, but of course we need to severely test the network throughput, because in HANA especially we need to follow latency KPIs. So there was a huge improvement in Azure Network. There were with standard network even more improvements, so we see lower latency there as well. And that means we now, with even in a zonal scope, have fulfill the HANA KPIs, often achieve same or even better latency as within the data center when we use both. So that was a huge improvement that makes us possible. Of course, that took a time, because Ralf, for instance, he did severe tests. Also, then Azure NetApp networking team did sorrowful tests to really improve that we can fulfill and meet the KPIs. And of course, customer managed key support soon to be added. That is one of the things. Geert mentioned that CMK is now available was announced, but it was announced after and built after we already made AVG available. So we now thought, hey, let's delay GA and get customer managed key support in. So that's why we are not GA yet, and still in preview. So that will come within the next weeks.
For the zonal deployment, and as Bernd mentioned, we really tested through the entire globe the zone latency between the data centers, and honestly, the maximum latency which we had to add to the latency envelope is 0.1 milliseconds, so 100 microseconds is the maximum latency what we have discovered between the data centers. And 100 microseconds is by far, let's say, a perfect value for this latency between the data centers. And so even if you have the highest demand on log write latency, you still can do with zone deployment. Another thing, what we also to mention, if you still hesitation for the zone deployment for your log devices, for example, or if you have a special system which is so unique that you think that the zone deployment would not be a good idea, then you still can do the pinning. So that extension 1 doesn't really force you to the zone deployment, but you still have the option.
It's a default option. Yeah,
it's a default option. Exactly. So therefore, another thing I think we should mention. But as in the last past few weeks, we had some very large customer deployments where we use zonal deployments, and we saw latency even across data centers between 0.3 and 0.35 milliseconds for the latency. And I think this is amazing. And it's like on-prem. So that is the super latency for the zone deployment.
Yeah. Hey, Ralf, and I think, of course, the important summary here is that basically the latency envelope of availability zones across the globe are well within the limits of what you need for any typical deployment. And I think that is a major advancement. If you look at the networking deployments and everything, that's a major advancement that we can now leverage, right? And that's why I think I'm so excited about this capability, because not only the latency within the AZ improves, also the deployment, obviously, as you can see now, will be vastly simplified. So this is great news.
Absolutely.
The flexibility you gain with the flexibility is really amazing for the customers.
And you see here in that slide, I mean, all the struggle with pinning AVset, with creating a PPG, which moving in, which filling a form to request it is gone. You create zonal VMs, and you select the same zone when creating the volumes, and all is fine. So no boundage to any compute cluster. You just need to find cluster or space within the same zone.
Hey, Ralf, so kind of what does it mean for a customer from a deployment point of view? Can you safely say this shortens the deployment time from
by days. Yeah,
by days, if not weeks. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no.
I mean,
usually the guys who did
I
the
would
pinning
say
were
it's immediately because
and it goes
pinning
down
is
to
always play
it goes
between
down to
customer
say
and Microsoft.
you shorten it by days from days to what, few hours? Is that kind of what you?
I would say hours.
Yeah, you don't have to wait any, so you remove that pinning time. So you don't that will remove that wait time. Yeah, before you create a request to the backend team, you have the pinning done. That was a manual action, so therefore you remove that time. So you done
no manual action anymore, right? I mean, that's no manual thing, and it's the time you need for planning, of course, right? And for deployment. So deploying a VM and deploying the volumes, that's easy, straightforward.
That's all. So you don't have to wait anymore that some manual nice person is doing the pinning in the background. You don't need any PPGs anymore, and so on. And so all those advantages are coming with that extension set one. And I think this is a huge improvement.
Yeah. So basically, just to summarize, what you were in the past, we were, or still officially, we were doing the pinning to ensure that the compute and the volume are physically close to each other to have the good latency. Now, what Ralf, you're telling that inside of the one zone, it's so low latency, which fulfill all the HANA and other databases requirements, that by just deploying just a zonal VM, no pinning, and zonal application volume groups, they always would be very close to each other inside of the one zone, that we don't need any kind of pinning, right?
And think about that scenario that you have a special VM type in mind you would like to deploy, and in that data center is no ANF. So in the past you could not deploy that VM type. Yeah, and by this change now you simply can say, hey, in the zone the VM type is available, and you deploy the required or desired VM type into that configuration. Yeah, so and
actually the resize is much more simple, because sometimes if the resize means you have a new VM SKU, it needs to go to new cluster. If that was pinned, then you need to move generally we do with the scripting to move to the new pin, which is more complicated. Here, just a resize and it will go to a new cluster, right?
Yeah, because in that zone, you don't need that cluster dependency anymore. This is gone.
This is why I say no pinning, feature. I'm opening the bottle of whatever juice, champagne.
At no level. Yeah, that's a huge improvement, and that was long asked for. Of course, we need, as Ralf mentioned, a thorough testing to ensure that all is fine. And now we have it. And you can still select PPG, as you see here in the combo box in the screenshot. That's fine. So that is a huge improvement, and I think many customers are really looking forward to have that.
Super. I don't know, Ralf. Okay. And you want to cover Oracle? Yes, please.
Even this extension is still in preview, but we still use this in the field also for production deployments at the moment, because once the volume is deployed, the volume is deployed. Yeah, you could even delete the AVG afterwards. A volume is a volume is a volume. So therefore, the customers, they should not be afraid to use this, because only the deployment process of those volumes is in preview. Yeah, therefore, even that the process goes into GA, then nothing will change to your volumes. Yeah, so I said, once a volume is deployed, it will not move. So therefore, customers already, and we use this already, as I said, for production environments heavily. Yeah, and so far we have seen amazing results, especially for the next topic what's coming up. Yeah, yes, Bernd, but first of all, start the next topic, and then maybe some other words for customer projects.
So this extension one basically is, as I mentioned, built in the AVG engine, right? And with Oracle, we implemented a new rule set. So that means we adapted the volume structures or the layout in a way that it mostly fit for Oracle when we started with Oracle database. So we now support up to 8 data volumes. an Oracle log, mirror log in the SAP space. Often customers want to use two log volumes, a backup which can be used for archive logs, and binary, of course. So a whole lot of volumes, and the customer can select it easily. So first, when he starts on the upper right side, we see when we create an application volume group, you now have the choice of selecting Oracle. And once you are in the Oracle screen, the changed slightly, so you can select the number of volumes you want and what is the total throughput you need. Then it's balanced over the number of data volumes you choose. And then in the next screen, you select the availability zone, right? And zonal support, I mean, is straightforward here. So basically, the features are, and also here, all the blue volumes here, and the light blue means they are optional, right? We don't force to have more than one data volume or a second mirror log or a backup volume. You can use backup method, whatever you want. But if you want, we will create them with separate storage endpoints, meaning IPs. So in other words, this could create upfront 11 IPs for you, so that there is no blocking latency at the client side, and it's even could be balanced, since it's zonal, over different ANF hardware, as long as in the same zone, right? Only if there is a hardware constraint, we would allow 3 data volumes with the same storage endpoint, right? But we now spread it across different ANF hardware so that we get maximum performance of up to 8 times 100 terabyte database volumes. Well, that's a huge improvement here.
Yeah, that is exactly what I used, or what we used 2 weeks back in the States. There was a migration of a 200 terabyte Oracle database into Azure. 200 terabyte Oracle migration. So that was really a big effort with a very cool customer. They even deployed 4 mirror logs. Yeah, because with 4 mirror logs, you are able to really have the best distribution from your log volumes, because the log archive happens always from the first member. Yeah, so you can create a construct that you really have only let's say reading from a certain volume and writing to 2 different volumes. Yeah, that you don't have any write constraints on the log volume. So they are I said with that customer, we really had a amazing success, and so we migrated the largest SAP Oracle combination into Azure now. I mean, 200 terabyte is really kind of a big system.
Yeah, so this is great. Great. I mean, I also wanted to touch on, whoever didn't watch the previous podcast that I was on, I would highly recommend looking at that one again, because I also talk about AVG for Oracle in particular around what it can do from a performance standpoint. We actually have published benchmarks as well, where we can demonstrate that we can do up to 800,000 AK random IOPS across multiple Azure NetApp Files volumes with a latency of less than a millisecond, or about half a millisecond, which translates to in a sequential type workload, like data warehouse type workload, into throughput like 10 gigabytes per second across multiple volumes, which basically is only limited by what the VM can do, not so much about what the storage can do, right? So, Ralf, I think we can safely say that not only from a capacity standpoint, we can handle massive size databases, but also from a performance standpoint, we can do the same now, in particular with this AVG capability, right? So I think it's a great advancement from a deployment standpoint.
That's correct. And even if you look out a little bit in the near future, when we get more and more those Azure Boost systems or network adapter into our in the Azure world with 200 gigabit per second, then your 10 gigabit will be the lower limit, to be honest. Then and I'm just testing this at the moment. To give you an idea what would be possible in the near future. So I have this running my backend here, and let's see where we end.
Yeah.
Maybe another podcast, Holger. Maybe another podcast.
Maybe, yeah.
I would say so.
Maybe.
So basically, the Oracle can benefit same like HANA with the application volume group, simplify deployment, and optimize performance with multiple IP address, and plus with extension feature 1, they can deploy in a zonal one, and they are same like for the HANA, so fully optimized. No need to ask Microsoft, please do the pinning left and right, and that's
Exactly.
it.
That was
Excellent.
that was the goal to stretch it. And we have, I mean, with Oracle is just one of the bigger databases that we now implemented. So yeah, good.
Maybe,
so what?
maybe one more word on last.
Oh yeah.
And imagine that you have a DB2 deployment or a kind of a deployment. I mean, the volume where you install the data into, it doesn't care about. It's an Oracle or DB2 or ASE or MaxDB or whatever database it will be. The volume is a volume in that sense.
Sure.
And if you see this, then we can also, for example, what we're also using, we take this Oracle AVG deployment and adopt it to DB2 or to ASE.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
the database has data volumes, has log volumes, has backup volumes, and has binary volumes. And the same you get with Oracle AVG. So there's another use case here to simply use the Oracle AVG and deploy DB2 on it. Just nothing.
Yeah.
Good. A few
Bernd, back to you.
Yeah.
A few additional remarks I'd like to add. So zonal versus PPG. So I mean, yes, of course, it's much simpler to use the zonal deployment. The question some customers may ask, what should I do with my PPG? Well, AVG is a at deployment type workflow. Once the volumes are deployed, and as Gerd mentioned, we have a new feature which means populate zone. Technically, the AVG volumes are regional volumes because we don't have the zone information in the old world, right? So you deploy the zone, you know the zone, and then you can reconfigure your VMs to not use the AVset anymore, but use a zonal deployment. That's at the VM side, and then the VMs are could spread in at startup, spread into the zone. The ANF still stay in the zone, which you show with, so no change of the ANF side. It's just a reconfiguration at the virtual machine side.
Yeah. Basically, I have also a customer that I work with, and they are also deploy ANF across the zones. And then the best practice is HMN. And what they say, they hate that they do not know for the HANA compute as well, the in volume directly in which zones they are. They know for the rest of the stuff, but they don't know for the compute, and they don't know for the volume. So what you said for the existing customer, and what Ralf also said, when the volumes are deployed on the correct place, what they can do, they can just populate the existing volumes with the zonal information, and then it's visible to them in which zones they are, and they can do it without any downtime. So to say, it's just to do it. And for the compute,
you don't you don't change the volume. You only deploy the metadata, which is basically in the background to tell you in which zone it's
exactly.
That is very important. Yeah.
And for the compute, if it's typically it's an availability set, they can leave it. I mean, fine, but maybe it would be better they could convert the in availability sets a regional VM. They could convert to the zonal VM, so to say, and in that way they would have a information that HANA VM or Oracle VM is in that zone. That's one point. And another point is they're not more limited to the pinning. Pinning is always some constraint. So meaning they could easier resize it, or the compute could run on any cluster. So meaning they would have much less challenges with potential challenges with no capacity, so to say, right?
Exactly.
We can talk, Holger, we have next week some updates on this move to zone script, so we will cover it there as well. Yeah, excellent. And one more point go. Yes,
go ahead,
please.
Go on.
Before you go, there are, if the customer would love to try it now, and they want to deploy zonal AVGs, they still would see only the PPG.
No,
they don't see the option to create a volume as a zonal one. So
it is in public preview. It is you need to register the AFAC at the moment, right? And with the AFAC, you then have a choice to select not PPG, but to select availability zone. And then when you create it with availability zone, you see the availability zone and the volumes.
So basically just the one, and I'm sure for the PowerShell commandlet, maybe the CLI, I'm not sure as well, but basically they just run it and then it will be enabled and they could see it in the portal and choose it.
It is all in the documentation on how to register the data.
Yeah.
Right.
Excellent.
Yep.
Okay.
Perfect. Next, standard network, basic network. We've seen a slightly lower latency with standard in some of the tests. So beside the additional feature of standard network, like security groups and so compared to basic network, there, as Geert mentioned, there is a conversion. But conversion is not only focused on, let's say, the AVG alone, because conversion, you need to think about what is in the what else is in the VNet, right? It needs some planning. It is in preview with zero downtime, right? But those restrictions you need to check. So, for instance, if one ANF hardware is used with standard, you cannot deploy a basic on the same hardware, right? So a few restrictions on that, but I think the change to standard needs a bit of a planning. Of course, if for new things that's easy going forward, but for existing environments, and then customer managed keys, that is what is planned for that quarter. So we will extend the public preview to include that customers, when creating an AVG, they can select the option of customer managed keys, and then all volumes in that application volume group will use CMK, customer managed keys, instead of PMKs. Also, there is a conversion, or I think transition is the right name, will be the right name, which is in preview as well. So, said that, one requirement you need to say, CMK, of course, requires standard network. So you cannot use CMK with basic network.
And
so there are 10 dependencies, right? With that was my short intro. Hopefully that is
excellent. Yeah.
Sharing.
Ralf, do you have anything on a customer side or experiences also? Some additional
yeah, like I mentioned there, that the 200 terabyte migration 2 weeks back was a pretty interesting thing, but also with that large project, it was again another perfect demonstration how teams really will work together. So we basically dropped our badges in front of the door and everyone worked close together. The customer was amazing. The partners were very knowledgeable. The SAP colleagues were great. And so it was really in collaboration like it's supposed to be. And if you see what you can do those days with cloud deployments, I mean, since when can we do a 200 terabyte Oracle migration? This is it's always the latest and greatest stuff happens. So with MV3, with all those compute power we meanwhile support and have in our data centers, latest CPU technology, latest ANF features, and with this all together, and if you have a great teamwork, I think there's at the moment no workload, which I'm afraid of migrating to Azure here. And basically, over Thanksgiving, the next big guy is coming. It is a 220 terabyte migration. Over Thanksgiving, another business trip for me.
Nice. So these customers are already running and using this productively, if I correctly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
okay.
This is a Fortune 9 company. So you see the size and what we talk about.
If I would be a customer,
but it's only a gamble of 9 to figure out which one it is, then, Ralf.
As Ralf mentioned, once deployed, the volumes are volumes.
Yeah.
I mean, and volumes with that features, once deployed and checked, do they have the right IP? Is all okay? They are GA. I mean, that is the difference. AVG, you can still leave it, but as Ralf mentioned, you don't use an edit function on AVG,
Yeah.
right?
Maybe
it is
just
a one-time deployment.
Yeah, maybe the last question. I think we are somewhere on the end, but quickly. I mean, if the customer do not, if they have the volumes which are not AVG deployed as non-AVG, the previous version, okay, they can stay with this, right? But they could also move to AVGs. So, in order, if they would love to get some benefits.
Well, if they have a non-AVG volume, moving to AVG is a migration. I mean, then
Yes.
a volume cannot be outside of AVG and then
So I think
it's a copy at the backend side either, or in HANA, the best way is HANA system replication. The target is AVG. You replicate, zero downtime. You switch over, then you're on AVG.
So I think, Ralf, there was a customer, if I'm not mistaken, in EMEA that was running Oracle workloads that had been deployed prior to AVG for Oracle. And they also, repetitively redeploy things for test development purposes. And they wanted to transition from, let's say, the old style to the new style of deployment. And basically, in order to standardize, they not only started deploying those new deployments, and also, let's say, migrated some of those production deployments to an AVG with zone-based deployment as well, to basically have a fully standardized way of doing things. Which is a valid use case scenario as well. Now, you don't have to, but I can understand from an operational standpoint, for customers to have standardized ways of doing things, it may make sense.
Absolutely. And so, if you see the size and performance, I mean, if you really have a congestion on that Linux sessions, then it's you're more or less forced to have that migration done. If you have, let's say, a smaller system where you do not see any contention on the Linux system, then let's say a migration is an option. But it's not a must. But of course, the recommendation is, of course, to use the new technology. Why not? I mean,
and the good thing is you can all do it yourself. You don't have to wait for anyone to do anything. So basically, you can schedule and plan it at your own pace and make any transition happen when you want it, right? So I think that's the biggest benefit of all, is that all this wait time is gone, and you can basically self-control your destiny.
And for me, the biggest benefit, I don't have to do any more pinning.
Last final words.
Yes.
So I guess we built this for Grom, not for the customers.
Exactly. It's now really cloud independent service. Great, guys. I think we covered really a lot. I mean, these are really exciting features. I'm pretty sure many customers will be encouraged to also implement it and use it. Happy to have you this time, and I hope we see you again. I mean, new features will be coming, new database, I'm pretty sure. So hope to see you also again sometimes.
For sure. We have always more news. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. Okay, bye-bye.